The Wave, Chapter 9. Ben Ross wasn't quite sure of what to make of the wave. What had begun as a simple history experiment had become a fad that was spreading outside his classroom. As a result, some unexpected things had started to occur. For one, the size of his daily history class was beginning to expand as students from free periods, study halls, and lunch came to be part of the wave. The recruiting of more students for the wave had apparently been far more successful than he had ever expected. So successful, in fact, that Ben began to suspect that some students were cutting other classes to sit in on his. Remarkably enough, though, even with the larger class size and the students' insistence on practicing the salute and the motto, the class was not falling behind. If anything, they were covering their assigned lessons even faster than usual. Using the rapid question and answer style that the wave had inspired, they had quickly covered Japan's entrance into World War II. Ben noticed a marked improvement in preparation for class and in class participation, but he also noticed that there was less thinking behind the preparation. His students could glibly spit back answers if by rote, but there was no analysis, no questioning on their part. In a way, he could not fault them because he himself had introduced them to the ways of the wave. It was just another unexpected development in the experiment. Ben reasoned that the students realized that to neglect their studies would be detrimental to the wave. The only way that they could have to spend time on the wave was to be so well prepared that they only needed half the regular class to cover their assigned lessons. But he wasn't certain that this was something to be pleased about. The class's homework assignments had improved, but rather than long, thoughtful answers, they wrote short ones. On a multiple choice test, they might all do well, but Ben had his doubts about how they would do on an exam consisting of essays. To add to this interesting development in his experiment was a report he'd heard that David Collins and his friends, Eric and Brian, had successfully infused the wave into the school's football team. Over the years, Norm Schiller, the biology teacher who also coached the school's football team, had become so soured by wisecracks about the team's continual losses that during football season he practically went months without speaking to another teacher. But that morning in the faculty lounge, Norm had actually thanked him for introducing the wave to his students. Would wonders never cease? On his own, Ben had tried to find out what it was that attracted students to the wave. Some of those he asked said it was just something new and different, like any fad. Others said they liked the democracy of it, the fact that they were all equals now. It pleased Ross to hear that answer. He enjoyed thinking that he had helped break down the petty popularity contests and cliques that he felt often preoccupied too much of his students' thinking and energy. A few students even said they thought the idea of increased discipline was good for them. That had surprised Ben. Over the years, discipline had become the increasingly personal responsibility. If the students didn't do it themselves, their teachers were less and less inclined to step in. Maybe this was a mistake, Ben thought. Perhaps one of the results of his experiment would be a general rebirth of school discipline. He even daydreamed about a story in the education section of Time magazine. Discipline returns to the classroom. Teacher makes startling discovery. Lori Saunders sat on a desk in the school publications office chewing on the end of a big pen. Various members of the Gordon Grapevine staff sat on desks around her, biting their nails or chewing gum. Alex Cooper was wearing his Sony radio and was bopping to the music through his earphones. Another reporter was wearing roller skates. This was the Grapevine's excuse for a weekly editorial meeting. Okay, Lori told them, we've got the same problem as usual. The paper is due out next week, but we don't have enough stories. Lori looked at the girl wearing roller skates. Jeannie, you were supposed to do a fashion story on the latest clothes. Where is it? Oh, nobody's wearing anything interesting this year, Jeannie replied. It's always the same thing. Jeans and sneakers and t-shirts. Well, then write about how there are no new styles this year, Lori said. And then she turned to the reporter who was bopping to his radio. Alex? Alex kept bopping. He couldn't hear. Alex, Lori said more loudly. Finally, someone near Alex gave him a nudge. He looked up startled. Yeah? Lori rolled her eyes. Alex, this is supposed to be an editorial meeting? Really? Alex replied. Okay, so where's your record review for this issue? Lori asked. Oh yeah, record review, right, yeah. Alex said. Well, you see, it's a long story. Like I was gonna do it, but remember that trip I said I had to take to Argentina? Lori rolled her eyes again. Well, it fell through, Alex said, and I had to go to Hong Kong instead. Lori turned to Alex's sidekick, Carl. I suppose you had to go to Hong Kong with him? She said sarcastically. Carl shook his head. No, he replied seriously. I made the trip to Argentina as scheduled. I see, said Lori. She looked around at the rest of the Grapevine staff. I suppose the rest of you have been too busy hopping around the globe to get anything written as well? I went to the movies, Jeannie said. Did you write a good review? Lori asked. No, it was too good, she replied. Too good? It's no fun writing reviews of good movies, she said. Yeah, said Alex, the Globe Hoppin' record reviewer. It's no fun doing a review of a good movie because you can't say anything bad about it. The only time it's fun to review something is when it's bad. Then you can tear it to shreds. He, he, he. Alex started rubbing his hands together as he went into his mad scientist routine. Alex had the best mad scientist routine in the school. He also did a great imitation of a windsurfer in a hurricane. We need stories for the paper, Lori said resolutely. Doesn't anyone have any ideas? They got a new school bus, someone said. Whoopee. I heard that Mr. Gabani's going on sabbatical next year. Maybe he won't come back. Some kid in the 10th grade put his fist through a window yesterday. He was trying to prove that you could punch a hole in a window and not cut yourself. Did he do it? No, he got 12 stitches. Hey, wait a minute, said a girl. What about this wave thing? Everybody wants to know what it is. Aren't you in Ross's history class, Lori? Another staff member asked. That's probably the biggest story in school right now, said a third. Lori nodded. She was aware that the wave was worth the story, and maybe a big story at that. A couple of days ago, it had even occurred to her that something like the wave is probably just what the sluggish, disorganized staff of the Grapevine itself needed. But she had set the idea aside. She couldn't even explain her decision consciously. It was just that creepy feeling she'd begun to get. The feeling that maybe they should be careful with the wave. So far, she'd seen it do some good in Mr. Ross's class, and David said he thought it was helping the football team. But still, she was cautious. Well, what about it, Lori? Someone asked. The wave? Lori said. How come you haven't assigned that story to us? Alex asked. Or are you just saving the good ones for yourself? I don't know if anyone knows enough about it to write about it yet, Lori said. What do you mean? You're in the wave, aren't you? Alex asked. Well, yes, I am, Lori replied, but I still don't know. A couple of the staff members scowled. Well, I think the Grapevine should have a story reporting that it exists at least, Carl said. I mean, a lot of kids are wondering what it is. Larry nodded. Okay, you're right. I'll try to explain what it is. But in the meantime, I want you all to do something. Since we still have a few days before the paper has to come out, try to find out everything you can about what kids think of the wave. Ever since the night she had first discussed the wave with her mother and father at dinner, Lori had purposely avoided the subject at home. It didn't seem worth creating any more hassles, especially with her mother, who could find something to worry about in everything Lori did, whether it was going out late with David, chewing on a pen, or the wave. Lori just hoped her mother would forget about it, but that night, while she was studying in her room, her mother knocked on the door. Babe, can I come in? Sure, Mom. The door opened and Mrs. Saunders stepped in wearing a yellow terry cloth bathrobe and slippers. The skin around her eyes looked greasy, and Lori knew she'd been putting wrinkle cream on. How are the crow's feet, Mom? She asked with good-natured humor. Mrs. Saunders smiled wryly at her daughter. Someday, she said, waggling a finger, someday you won't think it's so funny. She walked over to the desk and peered over her daughter's shoulders at the book she was reading. Shakespeare? What'd you expect? Lori asked. Well, anything except the wave, Mrs. Saunders said, sitting down on her daughter's bed. Lori turned to look at her mother. What do you mean, Mom? Only that I met Elaine Billings at the supermarket today, and she told me Robert is a completely new person. Was she worried? Lori asked. No, she wasn't. But I am, Mrs. Saunders said. You know, they've been having problems with him for years. Elaine has talked to me frequently about it. She's been very worried. Lori nodded. So she's ecstatic about this sudden change, Mrs. Saunders said. But somehow I don't trust it. Such a dramatic personality change. It almost sounds like he's joined a cult or something. What do you mean? Lori, if you study the type of people who join these cults, they're almost always people who are unhappy with themselves and their lives. They look at the cult as a way of changing or starting over, of literally being born again. How else do you explain the change in Robert? But what's wrong with that, Mom? The problem is not that it's not real, Lori. Robert is safe only as long as he keeps within the confines of the wave. But what do you think happens when he leaves it? The outside world doesn't know or care about the wave. If Robert couldn't function in school before the wave, he won't be able to function outside of school where the wave doesn't exist. Lori understood. Well, you don't have to worry about me, Mom. I don't think I'm as crazy about it as I was a couple days ago. Mrs. Saunders nodded. No, I didn't think you would be once you thought about it for a while. So what's the problem? Lori asked. The problem is everyone else at school who still takes it seriously, her mother said. Oh, Mom, you're the only one who's taking this too seriously. Do you want to know what I think? I think it's just a fad. It's like punk rock or something. In 2 months, no one will even remember what the wave was. Mrs. Billings told me that they're organizing a wave rally for Friday afternoon, Mrs. Saunders said. It's just a pep rally for the football game on Saturday, Lori explained. The only difference is they're calling it a wave rally instead of a pep rally, at which they will formally indoctrinate 200 new members? Mrs. Saunders asked skeptically. Lori sighed. Mom, listen to me. You're really getting paranoid about this whole thing. Nobody's indoctrinating anyone. They're going to welcome new members to the wave at the rally. Those people who would come to the pep rally anyway. Really, Mom, the wave is just a game. It's like little boys playing soldier. I wish you could meet Mr. Ross because then you'd see there's nothing to worry about. He's such a good teacher. He'd never get into anything like cults. And you're not disturbed by it at all? Mrs. Saunders asked. Mom, the only thing that disturbs me is that so many kids in my class could allow themselves to get caught up in something so immature. I mean, I guess I can understand why David is into it. He's convinced that it's going to turn the football team into a winner. But it's Amy I can't understand. I mean, well, you know Amy. She's so bright, and yet I see her taking this so seriously. So you are worried, her mother said. But Lori shook her head. No, Mom, that's the only thing that bothers me, and that isn't much. I promise you, Mom. This is a molehill, and you're just looking for a mountain. Really, trust me. Mrs. Saunders rose slowly. Well, all right, Lori. At least I know you're not involved in this situation. I suppose that's enough to be thankful for. But please, babe, be careful. She leaned over, kissed her daughter on the forehead, and left the room. For a few minutes, Lori sat at her desk but did not go back to her homework. Instead, she chewed on the big pen and thought about her mother's concerns. She really was blowing this way out of proportions, wasn't she? It really was just a fad, wasn't it?